thought I'd do a video about Lord of the Rings Online. I'm going through this article here from Massively OP. So this article is named Why People Bounce Off Lord of the Rings Online. So let's go for it. So, anytime that you are deeply invested in an MMORPG is perhaps one of the most disheartening and frustrating experiences to watch your friends or loved ones give it a try as well, only to find that it's really not their taste. At that point, you can either try to double down as a recruiter and help them through whatever barrier is keeping them from clicking with the game, or you can just let it go and cry silent at your keyboard. Now, I get this. I have a lot of friends that play video games, and getting into Lord of the Rings is very, very difficult. You know, they can see it as another, MMO clone like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars and things like that. So they can find it very, very jarring to get into, because again, it's very much samey with other MMOs. Let's carry on. Bouncing off MMOs when a person first tries them is a very real thing in this space, and it's certainly not limited to one title, which isn't. There's always that delicate period of onboarding where new players might decide that this isn't up their alley, worth their time learning the ropes or similar enough to what they've played before, which is stated. I've seen this happen often enough with both friends and colleagues as they give Lord of the Rings Online a go, only to pull the eject lever early on and never look back. So what makes people bounce off this game, and how could Standing Snow Games, which is the owner of Lord of the Rings Online, possibly address those sticking points? So let's see what it has to say. So the change of pace. LOTRO is often billed as a WoW clone, which is fair in some respects, but that comes with expectations that this MMO functions just the same as Blizzard's MMO. The thing is, it really doesn't. If MMORPGs, which I don't know what that means, I'm guessing American? I said multiplayer online American role-playing games. Yeah, are flat out sprinting through content, or Asian MMORPGs. Okay. Action MMOs are jogging, and even World of Warcraft power walking. LOTRO is at the back strolling. The whole pace of this game is different. No combat doesn't take forever to resolve, nor is overland travel measured in hours. But LOTRO certainly does slow down to smell the roses, taking the lore and ask the player to really get to know this world. If you're looking for relaxing and enriching journeys, this is it. But if you're expecting high-octane action and progress, it's bound to disappoint. Short of completely overhauling the game's design, which I would not advocate, which I wouldn't either, I don't know what the studio could do to help new players over this hurdle. It's one of those feel things that you either get or you don't. And sometimes to get it, you just simply need to give it some time. Okay, so this first part, I understand. I've been playing the game recently with a new character and things, and yeah, one area you can do lots in, and this is what I think really makes the game underrated, is because people do generally like to, get onto the next bit, but just to look at the area and the different aspects of the area and how it kind of builds this world is a really interesting thing and a really beautiful thing for Lord of the Rings Online, because that's what Middle-earth is about. There's a lot of fantasy aspect within the areas of Middle-earth, and it's great to appreciate that, and I think that's what has a sticking point for a lot of Lord of the Rings fans. Other people of video games might not like that, but it is something that, again, what it states here with overhauling, the game design, which would be really, really cool. They have, updated the graphics from the olden kind of times, the best way they can. But generally, what needs to happen is they probably need to migrate to another operating system where they can really overhaul it to the best of its ability and get it up to that kind of AAA standard. But again, that takes a lot of work. But yeah, I think that they could really. I think it's really underappreciated with how beautiful and how much of the world there is in this game compared to other games. It's very underrated. But yeah, the pacing can be very slow, and that can be quite challenging for players, so I understand what's that Cole's getting out there. Number 2, the business model. Actually, this may be problem number 1 for most people, at least according to regular comments left here at Massively OP. Some people are very put off and confused at the initial cost investment for Lord of the Rings Online, as even a subscription doesn't give you the expansions. Playing free is even worse due to all the restrictions and super grind for LOTRO points. That is the only viable path forward unless you want to pay. Fortunately, this is definitely an area that Standing Stone Games can address, and it's working on it. The last couple of years have seen massive content giveaways and deeply discounted expansions, but I'd urge Standing Stone Games to go further. Free players shouldn't be as deeply penalised in standard features, and in fact, they have seen some lightening up of restrictions recently in regards to class, race, and virtue unlocks. And subscriptions should cover all but the most recent expansion period. Okay, so there's a lot to take in what's saying here. I understand what they're saying in some cases, but I think it really puts a lot of flaws in the game by introducing the fixes that we're talking about here. So, yeah, as a free-to-play player, you do have restrictions. For instance, you don't have a riding skill, you have limited bag space, and there's a goal cap for free-to-play players. But again, it is free-to-play, so you're not investing in the game. It's free-to-play. They can't give too much away. Yes, they could probably reduce the restrictions to kind of make people play more. I don't think this should be limited bag capacity, because you do get a lot of stuff in the early areas. But it's just junk, but it does fill up your bag fast. One of the things that they do, and it's really cool, but it takes up a lot of bag space, is in the initial start, you get a gift box with items in it, and as you level, you'll be able to open this gift box, and I think it goes up to level 10 with these starter items that kind of get you going. That there's a lot there that will deplete your bag space very quickly. Alongside, obviously, you get stuff from killing, from killing X amount of mobs and whatnot. They give you stuff, so therefore it clogs up that bag quite easily. So more often than not, you'll be going back to sell, so you've got bag space to complete quests and get new items and things like that. Otherwise, again, you're just going to get a clogged up bag. So I think that needs to be taken away. I think, again, the goal cap isn't really a problem anymore in regards to the things that, how the game has advanced. So I think at the end of the day, the goal cap doesn't really need to be there, because at the end of the day, I think players, if they're convinced onto it, they'll go for a subscription model or whatnot and take off that goal cap quite easily. So the goal cap generally doesn't need to be there. Now, the riding skill, again, it will be very beneficial at an earlier stage. I think people will be very put off with that they have to buy the riding skill so they can ride a horse. But again, when we were talking about pacing on the last problem that they showed, there's people that will want to rush through it, and I think that ruins kind of the game's aesthetic. I think that they will get easily bored by doing that because they're not sitting back and looking at the areas that you're in and smelling the roses, so to speak. So I think giving them the riding skill earlier will allow them to speed across areas and kind of not take in the world, you know. And I think that can be quite jarring for the game and kind of take the edge off the game, where it's needed. What else? The subscription service. Now, again, that removes a lot of the restrictions that free-to-play players face. So the subscription model gives you much more. And they do a lot, with subscription service you get LOTRO points each month, which then you can spend on whatever you want within the store. The LOTRO points aren't grindy, like they say in this article. I found, what, as I said, we've been playing it recently with a new character. It's really easy to gain them points, in the start area. As I said, if you're taking it in smelling the roses, you will go through gaining them points quite easily because you want to complete all the quests there. And the completionist side of you, if you like that, will have you earning them points, and I think you can earn around about 150 within the start area. And that's enough to get you the riding skill and any other things that you may need. So limitations aren't that effective. You can get over the hurdles quite easily. But again, the information isn't given to you. You kind of learn that throughout the game. Without knowing that can be quite jarring. The game does kind of throw the store at you, but again, it's not essential. And I think a lot of people will see the store being thrown at you as a warning sign when it really isn't. You can still play the game normally and enjoy it without actually going to the store or spending any of your money. You don't have to get your wallet out for this game at all, and I really appreciate that when going into the game. It is beneficial, if you want to spend a little bit of money to get a subscription or whatnot. But you don't necessarily have to, it's not super grindy with LOTRO points, as this article says. You'll find yourself going to a certain area with a certain mob, and to get the points, it's called deeds. You complete deeds, so like Slayer deeds, which is to do with killing X amount of mob. And you'll find yourself doing that quite early on, and it's quite interesting because it'll show you how many you've killed or how many quests you've done. And that completionist side of you will have you doing that throughout the start area that you're at, especially for the elves and the dwarves. I think the hobbits and humans kind of have it a bit more difficult. I think the deeds in that area can be quite cumbersome, but I know in the start area for the dwarves and elves, it's quite easy to do them quite quickly and can take you around about, I'd say, 3 to 4 hours at most to complete the area's deeds and get around about, as I said, 100 to 150 points quite easily just by going through the quests and going through the certain areas and taking in that area. And that's the world building as well. So you get the world building, you get the main quest and the storyline done within that, as well as you get points, you get rewarded throughout it. So without knowing that can be quite jarring to new players. But to know that, if I told someone, oh, well, you can get points and then you can spend it on such and such, that could be quite interesting to a player. But again, there's initial hurdles getting over there as well. the expansion packs being available to subscription services, I think would really, really damage Standing Stone Games as a business. They get probably a certain amount of subscribers per year. I don't think with the game, this game isn't like World of Warcraft. It hasn't got the presence, hasn't got the stage presence. It hasn't, it's not a new game like New World or Lost Ark, so therefore it's not getting that initial boost of players. And again, it's not World of Warcraft, it's not Final Fantasy 14 that still have a huge player boom and still are increasing players every year. Lord of the Rings is kind of, as I said, at the back, kind of with its, fandom, with its Lord of the Rings fans and Tolkien fans, keeping it afloat a lot of the time. And as I said, you'll have players coming into it to kind of experience the world, but they may not stay. Because it hasn't got that influx, it hasn't got that mainstream media coverage that, as I said, World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy or Lost Ark are getting at this moment in time. So, to give all the expansions to subscribers, they're losing money. And the subscribers, as I said, they already get LOTRO points. They get Rest XP. They get all the caps that a free-to-play player gets removed. So they get quite a bit anyway as a subscriber. I think if I was a subscriber, because at the moment I'm not, I ain't got all the money in the world to kind of subscribe to it. But if I did, it would be very beneficial to me. I would, happily like to be a subscriber of Lord of the Rings Online because it gives you a lot of benefits already, initially as a MMORPG. The expansions, I've got most of them. Get some, I spent money on to get, but they, as I said, the article says they have had deals where they've reduced the pricing of the expansions and things like that, and they'll probably do it again in the future. Again, as I said, starter area, 150 points. Now you can decide to remove the certain things that free-to-play players have. That's quite easy. But again, that's the starting area. You have other areas that you go to, and you can do deeds and get more points. And if they do, again, these deals again, which I think the last deal, every expansion was 100 LOTRO points. So, by completing all the deeds in the starter area, which takes around about 3 hours, as I said, you can get the next expansion. And you won't get to that expansion until 50 hours into the game, because it's so far off within the scale of the game. The main storyline is open to you. It's there, already playable. There is some quests you can't do in certain areas, but again, they've done deals on that where they've been free. So therefore the restrictions have been removed, even for free-to-play players. The restrictions have been removed, and you can, as a free-to-play player, you can gain the expansions, just by doing the deeds and getting the points. It's not super grindy. Unless you want to speed run the game, it can be super grindy. Otherwise, you're smelling the roses whilst doing the deeds. Now, get on to the next one. Not being Tolkien fans, so this is kind of what I was talking about above. It can be quite jarring if you're not a fan of Tolkien. When it comes to MMOs based on long-established IPs, you have either players who are fans of that IP, or players who are logging in despite not being a fan. The fans of Tolkien's Middle-earth are well catered to here, sorry. But if hobbits and elves and magic rings to rule them all aren't a part of your geek collective, then a huge draw of the game is simply absent for you, which is true. A lot of us play video games set in IPs that we couldn't care less about. But in my mind, that offers an opportunity for the game itself to make converts to that franchise. I've seen LOTRO win a whole lot of people over to the world of Middle-earth simply by creating a living, breathing virtual environment that feels real in a way. But if you're not a fan, then the game's going to have to work in other areas to keep you engaged. Ease of use, production values, an initially engaging story, and more front-loaded fun are essential if the studio wants to grow the game's population, especially in light of the upcoming Amazon TV series, which they should just completely ignore altogether and not pay no mind, then it might want to consider taking time to doing a content pass over the very early game. Where can the tutorial or initial zones be streamlined and improved? Now, so what's this getting at is, obviously, if you're not a talking fan and you don't get invested, it can turn people onto the world, but some people might not be turned on just by the world itself. There might be game mechanics that, they feel are old-fashioned or rustic and they got bored of, or things like that. And that's understandable. I get that. As I said, this was in the heyday of MMOs, when there was a massive hype for MMOs being the same, tab targeting sort of MMO, a lot like World of Warcraft and things like that. That's fine. Okay, whatever. So, what are you doing, Mike? Okay. The problem I have with this, when what it's talking about is, basically, yeah, I think they need to do more within the early part of the game to kind of coax people into playing more of it. Streamlining it, I think, would be the worst thing to do. I think they need to add more to the early parts of the game. May it be voice acting, may it be, adding more to tutorials, adding more aspects to the environment of the game and how it's played, I think would affect it a lot and make it much more appealing, rather than streamlining it. Like this article says, the tutorial and the initial zones kind of put you into the story of Lord of the Rings Online. So it's essential and makes sense. It makes sense for it to have a story progression and get you involved in the world. If I've seen games that kind of plonk you into the world with no real sense of direction, and them games, by doing that, can feel very hollow. This game kind of gives you a trajectory, and it's a really good trajectory. I think what really affects players is in the tutorial sections is probably things that are easy to know, like opening a bag and how to fight, because they've done it multiple times. But again, this is an old game that back in the day, people wasn't as knowledgeable of that. So I think streamlining that and kind of making that, easy to learn or fast to learn, could be beneficial. But again, I think this tutorial works for the story. I don't think that needs, streamlining. I think that works. But improving, yes, I believe that could, be beneficial to people, catching on to the game. The Amazon series, again, as I said, they should ignore that completely. The way that's going and the way that Lord of the Rings fans see the Amazon series, it's not part of the Legendorium to a lot of them. Me included. Obviously, I'm biased because I was said me included. But I would much prefer if they completely ignored that. I think they would lose more player base by addressing the Amazon TV series than just ignoring it. Yeah. One time, they probably could have, made lots of money from this and lots of players from this. But no, I think this would put people off if they addressed any part of the series. Okay. So problem number 4, too much stuff, too much grind. So again, talking about the grind again. I know that anytime I log into a long established MMORPG, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed with the multitude of systems and a lack of knowledge as to what content and features are essential and what are basically noise that you can ignore. And so, yeah. Devs keep adding and adding without looking back to what they can then streamline, simplify, or clarify. LOTRO needs some of this to be sure. There is far too much grind, particularly with its virtue system. I'd advocate that Slayer deeds need another halving and virtues should go account wide. The game throws gobs and gobs of largely non-usable loot into your bags, particularly if you're not a crafter, that could be reduced. Orphan systems should be examined as to whether they should be made optional, as with epic battles, or brought up to date. Like many long-running MMOs, LOTRO is overloaded with stuff that doesn't all need to be there. Maybe it's time to get out the pruning shears. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with this last one here. So, yeah, I think, as I said, Standing Stone Games is at full speed ahead, looking into the future of its content. You know, they've got endgame raids, endgame zones, endgame story, and they're kind of going full speed ahead and carrying on with that trajectory. And as this article says, they're not really looking back, and I think they do need to look back. They have a little bit. They've opened up zones in the early parts of the game, which, you know, the game initially started off quite small. You know, you had this certain area, and because obviously it was a video game, you don't want to be, you know, it wasn't super realistic, so you wasn't spending hours walking from one town to another. But they are opening up the world a little bit more within the starter zones, which is great, you know, because I think with Middle-earth being such a vast world to explore, it's great to open up new areas, even within the early parts of the game. So they have been addressing that, but I understand what it means is that they're not addressing issues that the early part of the game has, and just kind of addressing, you know, the end game basically. With what they're saying about it being a lot of grind. Again, I've talked about this where, like, the starting zones, the completionist, you can run through the game. You can easily do that. But yet you can, you know, kill X amount, you do X amount. And I have played the game where it gets to a point where you will be doing a lot of things to level up. And level progression kind of gets slow, as many MMORPGs and role-playing games do. As you level, it gets harder to level. And playing it a while back, I remember that I got to a point where I completed what I could as a free-to-play player. The only way I could gain level was just by killing and killing and killing. You know, just like the killing balls meme from South Park. That's what it came down to, is just killing, so I can level up and then get to the next area. So that can be quite tedious. But hopefully, I think they've streamlined that a bit. I don't know. Obviously, I'll have to see with my new character how that progresses. But generally, with the free content that they've issued out and the areas you can go, I think when I played it a while back and we're doing that, I didn't kind of go through all of the areas and didn't appreciate all the areas. that I could have, and I kind of did run through it. So as the first problem stated, Lord of the Rings is a stroll, and I didn't my first time round, I didn't complete all the quests in my starter area. I should have done that, because as I said, points, story progression, and world building. Next, obviously spend time in the next area, and so on and so forth. I shouldn't have been at the end game until at least 100, more than 100 hours in. That's saying, obviously, I'm not saying the game is good before 100 hours in, but I was seeing it as I need to get from A to B for the game to get good. It's not. It's a gradual game, and it is good just to kind of explore and do the quests that you can do within the areas. I think that's what kind of stopped me doing it. I think now, as I said, with free content where you can do more quests with the free content, it opens up a lot of possibilities. But if you don't have, all the quests within the land, then it kind of does stop you and gives you a bit of a roadblock. I think that's something that probably needs to be addressed, and probably will do at some point within the game's future. Again, I don't agree with streamlining. I think streamlining will destroy the game by taking the aesthetic out of the game. I think they just need to add more to it. I think they just need to simplify. Yeah, I think they need to kind of make it so the new players are still going to progress to get that certain thing. I think that's what they need to work on in regards to that. What else? State. Right, so again, yeah, they say that they throw loads of non-usable loot at you. That is great because you can sell it all and get loads of gold. I've done that, and yeah, there's a lot of things that get thrown at you, and you're kind of like, what do I do with this? A lot of the time, when it comes to like the early game, you can just sell it all. Sell it all. Keep the armor, obviously, that it's going to make you more powerful as you carry on. But essentially, all the things that are there, be it crafting items, be it useless mob loot, anything like that, sell it all because it's not needed. You will advance within the game. If you are a crafter, you will advance within the game as well. If you want to, you can start early. As I said, killing all these mobs and getting that craftable stuff, can help you advance your craft. I think starting that early on is quite cool. You can do that. You can start quite early on within the game. But generally, it's not essential. There is an auction house. People sell you a lot. People will help you. If let's say you're starting out with a craft and you need X amount of stuff to, level up your crafting, there's going to be people on the servers that are happy to just give you things for free. That's the thing. The community within Lord of the Rings Online is very helpful. They will always help where they can. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a jarring thing to say that obviously that there's useless loot, because at the end of the day, if they take out all that loot, you will gain the money from selling said loot. So therefore, you're not getting any money apart from doing the quests. And that's pittance, to be honest. I can get, by just selling all the loot that I've got, around about 2 gold, every time I go and fill up my bag. So it's really, really beneficial to kind of have that useless loot that you can just sell as needless items. In regards to, we was talking about orphan systems, like epic battles, I think, again, they don't need to be made optional, per se. I think what they need to do on that is look at it. Like, they have looked at the legendary item system, which is really cool, where you can obviously craft legendary items to use, so like legendary weapons and whatnot. That's a really cool and unique thing that you can do within the game. Epic battles is something, again, they could probably look into and making, better in any way, because they're part of, again, the world building and the aesthetic of the game. You've seen the Lord of the Rings films or read it on the books or whatever. You know that there's battles within this world, and they are iconic. They are essential to the story, and I think epic battles will try to do the same. They're there. People still do them. They're still epic battles at the end of the day, and it's a very interesting concept. To fight at Helm's Deep or to fight in Minas Tirith and whatnot. Whilst when I was doing it, I enjoyed them parts, but again, I did find them overwhelming. I think a lot of the time, I think they need to look at the epic battles and see what they can do to make it less overwhelming and more pleasing, to the player. It can be exhilarating, but also I think that they can kind of make it so that you're not the only one doing something within the epic battles. Cause that's what I felt when I was playing them, is that no one else was really doing anything substantial, only I was, and I had to do several things at once, and things were getting, left out, and that can be disheartening whilst you're doing these battles, that you're failing whilst trying to do something, and again, overwhelming. That's just obviously my personal take. I did feel overwhelmed with them, but I enjoyed them because I understand that it was high octane, they were fast paced and whatnot. But again, it felt like I was the only one, doing anything beneficial in this epic battle where you had Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and whatnot being there. It didn't make sense in many cases where we were failing when we shouldn't have been. But yeah, looking at that and not streamlining it or making it optional, but just making it more appealing, making it more something that you can go into and really, really enjoy being in that moment, being in that battle. I think we really need to, as I said, brought up to date, as the article states there. So let's see what they have to say here. Well, some bounce, others stick. I certainly don't mean to imply with this column that every new player bounces off of LOTRO, just that some do, and it'd be a good idea for the studio to identify why and work to address that. But there are many players who are still, to their joy, discovering how rich, full, and fun Lord of the Rings Online can be in 2022. I recently saw a great piece at The Gamer that argued from the perspective of a new player that LOTRO is the best talking adaptation to date, which is fantastic. That's only what I've been saying since 2007. So this guy really likes Lord of the Rings, which is great. As I said, massively OP. Like to do a lot of Lord of the Rings articles. I understand where this guy's coming from when it comes to certain things. Certain things that obviously, I object to with, streamlining. With this game, it doesn't need pruning. It needs updating. It needs more to it in the initial game and then going forward. There's as I said, there's things in the end game that they could have brought, back to the early game, and it would work perfectly. So yeah, I think overall it does need a bit of a revamp. But again, Dinosaur Games is still a small business in regards to like Blizzard or Square Enix and things like that. It's a small business, so therefore they're going to work with how they can work. But I do think that the game does need to migrate to a new games engine. They need a team working on overhauling, how it looks and bringing it up to date. And I think they'll be able to really make an impact by just having a new aesthetic, a new, lick of paint, as it were, to the game. And that's just one thing. There's several things that they can do, as this article explains, as well as what I've explained. There's several things that they can do. To name one, well, with this new character, which is a high elf, and the high elves, spoiler alert, the starter tutorial is the Battle of Fire. No, sorry. The Last Alliance battle against Sauron. And this is really, really cool to see, going into this character. What's really kind of sways you away from it is that the dialogue is amazing, the place is amazing, but there's no voice acting. If there were just voice acting for a lot of like the story and the quests and whatnot, I know it'd be a lot of effort because there's a lot of quests, a lot of people. You're looking at millions and millions of dialogue to voice act, but just simply having that, even like in the opening, would draw people in tremendously. So that's what I've got to say in regards to Lord of the Rings Online and this article. Just thought I'd address, give my 2 penny to it. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe. You go. Have a good day.